Look at this portrait. Who is this ugly and wrinkled hairless old man, the richest man in the history of mankind? Not a single family grew rich as quickly as this one. He is considered the creator of the modern world and the founder of a secret world government. Some cursed him and called him the devil, others exalted him as a generous benefactor. The surname of his clan became a household name, the surname Rockefeller. Since childhood, he dreamed of being rich and living forever. His father fed people oil as medicine, and he fed the whole world with oil. At the age of 45 he became the richest man in the world. He robbed and ruined competitors, but donated billions to the poor. Perhaps his clan secretly rules the world. His last name is Rockefeller. Today we'll talk about how to become fabulously rich and make all your dreams come true, when it seems like the whole world is against you. John Rockefeller became the first oil tycoon in history, and he remains the largest to this day. Looking at his life, you don't understand how the hell it happened. We will try to understand the components of Rockefeller's success. How to think to get rich. Dreams are the most important thing in your life. A person dies when he stops dreaming, John Rockefeller believed. Well, let's get into his head and find out what he dreamed about, and at the end I'll give you a few rules of life from Rockefeller that will help you. Facts from biography and childhood. Rockefeller had two dreams, and both, it must be said, were quite childish: to live forever and be fabulously rich. Well, almost like that. He wanted to earn $100,000, which is almost $2 million at the current exchange rate, and dreamed of living to be 100 years old. As a result, he exceeded one dream, but fell just short of the second. Rockefeller was born 184 years ago, in 1839, the second of 6 children. His family lived in a small town near New York. The irony is that almost immediately the oil from which the Rockefeller adults would make billions seeped into their lives, but like his mother, Aziz Davidson was a believing Christian originally from Scotland, she was thorough and strong-willed in maintaining both home and family. But his father, William Rockefeller, was a gentleman of fortune, and simply put, a swindler and a rogue who did odd jobs. And one day William decided that the path to easy money was opened by counterfeit drugs. He himself produced such bullshit and sold them to gullible Americans. The irony is that one such cancer drug included crude, unprocessed oil. In those years, when John Rockefeller was still little, there was already oil, but no one knew what to do with it, because there weren't even cars yet, and oil refining into fractions had not been discovered. Black gold was not pumped out of the ground on an industrial scale as it is now. It seeped to the surface on its own and was often used as medicine. I generally consider it a remedy for all diseases, from coughs to cholera and hemorrhoids. So popular in those days in the USA and Europe, the drug, Healing Patrol, was just a bottle of it, which it was suggested to drink 3 teaspoons daily. Perhaps not everyone survived after this. Well, in fairness it should be said that oil has healing properties and is contained in microscopic doses, for example in aspirin, but that's another story. The oil rush in the USA will begin when John Rockefeller turns 19 years old, then kerosene will be produced from oil, but more on that later. Let's return to Rockefeller's father. He did not achieve much success in business, but he raised a commercial spirit in his children. He paid for all successes and housework. So, for example, cleaning the house cost 5 cents, and chopping wood was already 15. For children, money from their father became, well, an indicator of parental love. The more you earned, the more valuable and beloved child your father considers you. The father figure for a child generally means power and care. Remember this fact. It seems to me that it will be very important in Rockefeller's character. Money equals love, money equals care, money equals power. All this added to the trauma, because when Rockefeller turned 14, his father abandoned his family and ran away from home to Canada, where he married for the second time without divorcing his first wife. But this is the 19th century, the Wild West. There were no government services, and most people didn't have documents. So John remained in charge. he was the first and last job hired. He studied to be an accountant, but did not waste time on college and received the necessary knowledge by completing a month-long course. From his first years, Rockefeller's distinctive qualities were visible: business cynicism and a strategic approach. Already as a child, he lent money to his friends at interest, bought candy in boxes and sold it individually. He also allegedly caught wild turkey poults, then fattened them and sold them as farm turkeys at a much higher price. Since childhood, Rockefeller kept a diary of expenses and income, a rather boring hobby for a 6-year-old little boy, you must admit. But if you remember that for Rockefeller, money is an indicator of parental love, then everything becomes a little more clear. At the age of 16, John decided that he needed to get a job, and now he visited 100 companies before he found an accounting firm that hired him, and Rockefeller, it must be said, fully earned this trust. If he started doing something, he latched onto it like a thing, and didn't let go until he got everything he needed. And here 16-year-old Rockefeller was the first to come to work at about 7 in the morning and the last to leave at 9 in the evening. He didn't. I took smoke breaks, skipped drinking sessions with colleagues, and didn't drink alcohol at all. All his life he was not interested in dancing, he just worked, and worked. Rockefeller simply understood that you need to invest your maximum attention into a new business, and then in a short period you will get the most effective result. At first he was an assistant accountant, with a salary of 50 cents a day, that's about $10, after a year his salary tripled. And at the age of 19, he was offered to become a manager with a salary of $600, that's $50,000 a month today. Well, Rockefeller refused. He realized that if he worked all the time, he would never have time to earn really big money. This was his first and last job for his uncle. In the 1859 U.S. oil rush, American businessman Edwin Drake discovers a method for extracting oil from wells, and this changes the market. They learn to distill oil into kerosene, and lamps are fueled with kerosene. That is, oil was mainly used to illuminate houses, and it immediately became a very popular commodity. Hundreds of small companies all over America are starting to pump this oil, and this boom has a very unexpected effect. It saves whales. Well, before the advent of kerosene, lamps were fueled with whale oil, so many whales were killed that only a miracle could save them from extinction. This miracle was oil. But it did not bring wealth to the discoverers of the method of extracting oil from wells. The Cinco Oil Company in which Edwin Craig worked turned out to be unprofitable, and the entrepreneur himself died in poverty and did not patent the discovery. But all the cream goes to Rockefeller, of course. Way to wealth. Rockefeller was consistent. He did not invent anything, but acted systematically, or rather even created systems wherever he could. All these corporations, strategies, perhaps all this was for him a kind of simulator, that is, a substitute for parental love, a substitute for family, hence such passion and subsequence. In fulfilling his plans, John also created his own family as a business. The enterprise was thought out for the long term. All his life he was married to one woman. I don't know how such a person as Rockefeller, his facial expression was with passion, sincere feelings, but he was faithful, and 5 children were born in the marriage. In the family, Rockefeller adopted the same system of rewards for success that was under his father. He got straight A's in school, housework was paid in cash, and the only boy in John's family, Rockefeller Jr., would in the future inherit his father's empire. Rockefeller did not believe in luck, he believed only in work. At the age of 20, he and his classmate Maurice Clark opened a business selling everything from clothing to food. At first, Rockefeller works in this company as a junior partner. In 1861, a civil war breaks out in the United States, and the Rockefeller Company earns a lot of money by supplying the army of the northern states to the future victors in this conflict. Together with a partner, they open their own oil refinery, where Rockefeller takes the next step. He comes up with the idea of not just distilling oil into kerosene, then every small company made its own craft kerosene. No, Rockefeller figures out what to make from oil. You need to make money not from production but from refining, to make not only kerosene from oil but also paraffin, petroleum jelly, fuel oil, and so on. In 1863, he and his colleague Clark partnered with the talented chemist Samuel Andrews, who created standards for the production of kerosene and other high-quality substances. Small oil companies around went bankrupt and Rockefeller decides to buy them. For this he needs sole power, so he collected all the money he had and bought his company from his partners. Then he begins expansion and, in a short period of time, buys 24 small factories in Cleveland. Rockefeller did not believe in compromises, especially in business. He said that there is an opportunity to get rid of a competitor, then he will get rid of him in any way. He bribes a transport company to get preferential tariffs for transportation. He buys some oil producers, intimidates others, but gets his way. A small company grows 24 times. In 1870, he founded the Standard Oil Company. This company, like an octopus, stretches its tentacles across all the United States. Within a year, Standard Oil received 4% of oil production in America. But this is not enough. If Rockefeller took on something, he wanted to get everything and gets it. In 1880, the company produces 90% of all oil. In the country it has 20,000 wells and 100,000 employees. Every year his fortune increased by $1 billion, that is, by 20 billion in terms of modern money. It was incredible. At 40 years old Rockefeller was a billionaire and monopolist, philanthropist and Iron Man. But having achieved all the money, Rockefeller received hatred. Mephistopheles from Cleveland is what they call him. They compare him to the devil and say that all his money was earned from the blood of hard workers. This time in the USA is generally called the Gilded Age. This is such an irony. The Golden Age is prosperity and universal goodness, and the Gilded Age is when corruption, banditry, and oppression of people are hidden behind the external gloss. But in fairness, it should be said that then all the businessmen played dirty, and those who tried to be white and fluffy ended their days with nothing. The newspapers begin a campaign against the exposure of Rockefeller by Ida Tarbell. Rockefeller and his harsh methods of work since the late 80s of the 19th century. Exposing articles appear in newspapers. This damages his reputation, but Rockefeller shrugs it off not very much and pushes on, although 2 blows almost destroyed his empire. In 1885, oil prices collapsed. They fell from 30% to 8 cents per barrel. There was too much kerosene, the market was overcrowded. Nobody knew where else to use oil. It seemed that Rockefeller would collapse, but Henry Ford saved him. The automobile boom that begins in the United States along with the assembly line production of cars creates an urgent need for gasoline, and oil prices are creeping up again. To protect the company from such an unpleasant image, Rockefeller retires at 57 years old. He decides to do charity work and improve his image. He donates huge sums to universities, churches, hospitals, but the public looks at this with distrust. Well, it's like cheap PR, when in fairness it should be said that from an early age, from the first money he earned, Rockefeller actually gave 1/10 of his income to help those in need, but he considered this such a fair payment for his success. And as soon as everything calmed down and it seemed possible to exhale, Rockefeller received a second blow in the gut, from a female journalist. Ida Tarbell begins to dig under his company. The whole point is that Ida's father owned a small oil company that Rockefeller ruined, and the woman is driven by revenge and her own understanding of justice. And in 1904, she published a book on the history of Standard Oil, where she presented to the public all the hidden schemes and dark affairs of a businessman, and here it became no joke at all. The state drew attention to the company. 400 plants, 90,000 miles of pipelines, 10,000 railroad tanks, 60 ocean tankers, 150 river passages and much more. At the end of the 19th century, Rockefeller is not just a businessman, he is a state within a state. He pays security forces, pays congressmen, pays bandits. In fact, he controls the industrial policy of the United States and the authorities, of course, cannot come to terms with this. Since the 1890s, monopoly laws have already begun to work in the United States, and the journalist's book becomes a trigger, and the then US President Theodore Roosevelt swears that he will crush Rockefeller. Due to this news, John Rockefeller is experiencing extreme stress. We can compare two photographs of him before and after. Rockefeller begins to experience alopecia and baldness due to nervousness. He loses his hair, eyelashes, eyebrows, and really becomes like a demon, a very, very, very rich demon. In 1911, the court decided to liquidate the Rockefeller monopoly and divide it into 34 companies, but Rockefeller did not give up and twisted the situation in his favor. As a result, this only enriches him, since Rockefeller retains the shares, and his companies entered into a struggle among themselves, and the quotes of his companies rise in price. Now he owns not a single hyper company, but a whole network of assets that do not always officially belong to him. This was Rockefeller's new, already rebuilt business system. By the way, at the end of his life, Rockefeller managed to correct his image of a bloody businessman, and competent PR people helped here. Rockefeller was advised not just to do charity work, but to do it on camera. Since then his grandfather began to publicly distribute money to the poor and tip large sums of such donations from Rockefeller, and good parting words became a kind of tradition and soon filled the front pages of newspapers. Such a billionaire flash mob, and perhaps the first in history in the eyes of the public, Rockefeller corrected himself and turned into such a sweet eccentric old man who loved children and tramps. Well, at the end of his life, the sweet eccentric old man had a fortune that would be estimated today at $500 billion, which was 250 times more than what Rockefeller dreamed of as a child. John Rockefeller died at the age of 97, only 3 years short of reaching his desired 100 years. After this, the Rockefeller family gets involved, and then rumors about a secret world government begin to appear, because those who own the money own the world. And there were reasons for such rumors. Rockefeller's son, for example, began building New York in 1931 at the height of the Great Depression, when millions of people were sitting in the USA without a penny. He began to build the 70-story Rockefeller Center. No one believed in this bold step, but construction gave jobs to 75,000 people. And the building was completed. When the Second World War began, the Rockefeller family made even more money because they sold fuel for tanks and airplanes. Fans of conspiracy theories believe that the Rockefellers started the war, because at one time the Rockefeller Bank J.P. Morgan sponsored Adolf Hitler by giving him a loan of $11 billion and essentially helped him come to power. After the end of the war, the Rockefellers built the UN. John Rockefeller Jr. allocated land and $8.5 million for the construction of the headquarters of the United Nations, and also the Rockefeller Chase Manhattan Bank, the first American bank to open in the USSR. It happened in 1972 at a gala dinner at the Metropole Hotel. John Rockefeller's grandson David Rockefeller covered the luxurious meadow with delicacies and alcohol, and all this abundance was literally swept away in a few minutes by the visiting Soviet party leaders. According to recollections, they almost fought over sausage, after which David Rockefeller realized and wrote down that communists who are so greedy for treats do not generally pose a serious danger. In 1991, the Soviet Union collapsed, and in 1992, its last ruler, Mikhail Gorbachev, was given $75 million by David Rockefeller to open a charitable foundation. Well, it's unlikely that such a generous gift would be given just like that, and many suspected Gorbachev of simply draining the USSR with Rockefeller money. It was also the Rockefellers who founded the Bilderberg Club in 1954, the most secret closed party of the richest people in the world. This club is chaired by the same grandson of John Rockefeller, David. Every year, businessmen and politicians from all over the world flock there and decide something there. According to conspiracy theorists, it is behind the closed doors of this club that the Rockefellers and the company distribute presidential posts and, in general, decide global issues on planet Earth. Like, for example, United States President Bill Clinton, In 1991 he was an uninteresting governor of the shabby state of Arkansas, but after visiting the Bilderberg Club, he was suddenly elected President of the United States. There are many such examples, and they create around the Rockefellers a truly mystical, I would even say sinister, image of the behind-the-scenes rulers of the planet. How true this is, well, decide for yourself to the extent of your depravity. This definitely shows that the story of John Rockefeller did not end. Money gave him a feeling of love, support, and family, and his physical family continued the work he started. Moreover, Rockefeller's grandson Davis survived 6 heart transplants, and yet fulfilled his grandfather's second dream. He lived until he was 100 years old and died at 102. And for 7 generations now, the family has remained at the center of the world's financial elite. Well, John Rockefeller didn't invent or discover anything innovative, he didn't do anything heroic on his own, but he understood one thing very well: in the future, alone in the field is not a warrior. No matter how brilliant he is, he loses alone. Therefore, it is necessary to create new working systems. In the 21st century, the concept of a social family appeared, a group of people who move together through life. The blood family fades into the background, it is not chosen, but the social family is your personal responsibility, and here you can make a choice: friends, colleagues, neighbors who replace your brothers and sisters. The more active your social family is, the more connections you have, and the opportunity and ultimately success, money, and happiness is a living social network system that helps you develop and achieve your goals. Of course, in the middle of the 19th century, no one spoke of such concepts, but Rockefeller seemed to feel that the main thing was that correctly created and structured systems would make him both rich and powerful. He thought strategically all his life, he created strategies, systematized disparate elements, built workers from them, the schemes that he spread like networks, and ultimately it was they that brought him and his family money and fame and, as some believe, real power. A secret world government does not sleep over the world. Remember this and do not forget. 5 Rules for Becoming Rich from John Rockefeller. In the end, as promised, I will voice 5 rules of John Rockefeller, which helped him get rich, and who knows, maybe they will help you get rich too. The first rule is, do not be afraid of large expenses. You need to be afraid of small incomes. If you have no money, open a business. If you have no money at all, open a business immediately. The second rule, communicate with winners and optimists. A poor environment always pulls you into poverty. Change your environment as John Rockefeller advises. The third rule, perseverance is generally the main rule of success. Remember, he beat 100 companies. Perseverance can overcome everything, even the laws of nature. The fourth rule, from John Rockefeller, I would rather receive 1% of the efforts of 100 people than 100% of my efforts. Fifth rule, money comes through other people. Communicate by studying the biographies of the richest people, how we have the key to success, and remember, only passive income will bring you prosperity. That's all. I hope that Rockefeller's story has inspired you and made you think about something. You can draw your own conclusions, and please also write in the comments whose other stories you would like to hear in the next issues. In the meantime, John Rockefeller and I wish you a great day.